I'll see you tonight.
A gargantuan masked brute stands in the center of a savage makeshift prison cage, dominating his rival in a brutal display of strength. With a roar, he hoists his opponent high above his head, muscles straining, before violently slamming him into the dirt, basking in the cheers of the surrounding inmates. The violence is cut short as prison guards storm the pit, treating him less like a human and more like a domesticated beast. Just a few yards away, in a cramped, claustrophobic cell, a stoic African-American inmate sits in the dim light, pouring his soul into a weathered journal. He muses on the inherent cruelty of existence, reflecting on how society is nothing but a masquerade, where everyone hides their true nature behind a facade. As he finishes his entry, he turns his attention to his sleeping cellmate. With cold mechanical precision, he throttles the man, silencing him permanently before utilizing a pair of pliers to gruesomely extract his teeth. As the first light of dawn breaks, the bodies are dragged out to be discarded in unmarked shallow graves. Thousands of miles from this nightmare, in the industrial city of Magnitogorsk, Russia, an American expatriate named Kyle LeBlanc is grinding through a grueling shift at a local steel plant. His wife, Gray, is struggling under the weight of her isolation. She's miserable, exhausted by the foreign landscape, and desperate for a semblance of home. After his shift ends, Kyle calls her. Gray, feeling the guilt of her own unhappiness, apologizes for being difficult, but Kyle understands. As they talk, the line crackles, and the power in their home dies. Through the window, a shadowy figure emerges. An intruder breaches the house. Gray, panicked, fumbles to restore the power and calls Kyle, but the line is cut as a predator named Sergei Kovac bursts in, unleashing a savage beating. Kyle hears the terror in her voice and floors the accelerator, driving like a madman while frantically trying to alert the authorities, but the language barrier renders his pleas for help unintelligible. Kovac draws a knife. Gray fights for her life with everything she has. But it isn't enough. She suffers a fatal stab wound. Her eyes glaze over. Kyle crashes through the door, his heart stopping as he finds his wife's lifeless form. He pulls her close, his world shattering, before a vase smashes into the back of his head, knocking him senseless. The killer, sensing a chance to flee, makes a break for it. Kyle snaps back to consciousness, adrenaline surging, and gives chase. He catches up to a moving tram, leaping aboard to confront the murderer. A desperate, claustrophobic brawl ensues, and Kyle manages to wrest the knife from Kovac's grip, hurling the killer out the tram window. Kyle jumps after him, but his momentum is halted by a violent collision. A motorcyclist slams into him, shattering his arm. The rider is a cop. Kovac slips away into the night, and Kyle, broken and bleeding, finds himself in handcuffs. At the subsequent trial, the judicial process is revealed to be a farce. The judge rules for an acquittal, citing insufficient evidence. Kyle is paralyzed with disbelief. His attorney later admits the truth. Kovac's family is wealthy, and the judge was paid off. As they exit the courthouse, Kovac, fueled by malice, smirks and executes Kovac right there in the hall. For this act of desperate vengeance, Kyle is sentenced to life without parole in the notorious Krovavi prison. Upon arrival, Warden General Hershov greets the new batch of inmates with a display of pure terror. He orders his guards to drag out a prisoner who had attempted a failed escape. The man's knee is shattered, and his screams echo through the yard, a visceral warning of what awaits anyone who defies the administration. The newcomers are forced to strip, their possessions tossed into a bin. Lieutenant Tolik spots a gold wedding band on Kyle's finger and demands it. Kyle refuses. Tolik responds by brutally cracking him with a baton. Kyle collapses, screaming in agony, as Tolik rips the ring from his finger by force. The only item Kyle manages to salvage is a faded photograph of Gray. He is shoved into a line for a mandatory haircut and roll call. As he stands there, he sees Tolek flaunting the wedding ring on his own finger, wearing it like a war trophy. Kyle swallows his burning rage, retreating into the memory of the photograph, the two of them swimming under the radiant Louisiana sun. It feels like a lifetime ago. He wonders if this is all a hallucination, a nightmare that he will wake up from. But the reality of the prison is cold and immediate. The nightmare is just beginning. After lights out, Tolek and his henchmen return to extract a young inmate, Billy Cooper, from his cell. Accompanying them is Andre, an inmate with deep influence and connections who leverages the guards for everything he desires. Tonight, he wants the young American. The sounds of Billy's screams emanate from the next cell, but the other prisoners stay silent. In Krovavi, apathy is a survival mechanism. A piercing siren signals the dawn. Kyle heads to the lineup, nauseated by the sight of Billy, who is barely standing, beaten and humiliated. Andre notices Kyle staring and provokes him, smacking his lips in that same infuriating rhythm Kovacs used before his death. Kyle loses control and attacks the gangster. They trade blows, but Tolek intervenes instantly, dragging Kyle away. His punishment is solitary confinement in a cell, with busted plumbing. Foul, stagnant sewage floods the floor, and the walls are etched with the desperation of previous occupants. Kyle's mind is a loop of Gray's murder. He lies on the cold concrete, refusing food. Everything he loved is gone. His existence is void. He attempts to strangle himself with his shirt. When that fails, he slams his head against the wall in a frenzy. He hallucinates Gray's screams, louder and louder, until he collapses from sheer exhaustion. Suddenly, a moth flutters in through a jagged opening in the ceiling. He is instantly transported back to a memory. A moth had flown into their home years ago, and Gray had pleaded with him not to harm it. She whispered the local folklore, that humans transform into butterflies upon death, and if you see one, it's a sign that your loved one is still tethered to you. She took his hand, pressing it to her heart. The memory is severed by a scream from the neighboring cell. Kyle knocks on the wall. The neighbor knocks back. They are two souls in the same abyss. Guards arrive to silence the neighbor, but the moth remains. It flutters onto Kyle's food tray, seemingly urging him to sustain himself, to persist. The American decides this is a sign from Gray. He picks up the spoon. When his sentence in solitary concludes, Kyle is relocated to a cell with an enigmatic older African-American prisoner, known only by his registration number, 451. Tolek sneers, warning Kyle that 451 has already sent multiple cellmates to the infirmary, and offering him a special arrangement if he wants to pay to move. Kyle refuses to play their crooked game and moves in. His cellmate, however, remains silent, writing by candlelight, indifferent to the newcomer. Days blur into the grueling labor of railroad construction. Kyle is pushed to the brink of physical collapse, kicked awake by guards when he falters.
Back to work!
A few days later, Gray's brother arrives for a visit, bearing the news that she has been laid to rest in America. He pleads with Kyle to pay the guards, to bribe his way into safety. Kyle considers it. Out in the yard, Andre tries to hit Kyle with a ball but misses, inciting a minor conflict with another gang. Kyle ignores the drama and encounters Billy again. The boy, only 21, explains he was merely driving through Russia, met a girl, got intoxicated, and she crashed his car into a restaurant, leaving him with an 18-month sentence. An inmate named Malachi, maneuvering his wheelchair nearby, approaches Kyle. He's read about Kyle's case in the papers and offers his respect. Malachi, an old hand in Krovavi, outlines the prison's power structure. Andre is the enforcer for the Russian mafia, headed by a brute named Bolt. Between the mafia and the corrupt guards, they hold absolute sway. Other gangs avoid them, focusing their violence on each other. Malachi suggests Kyle pay Tolek to facilitate a move, but Kyle is skeptical. That night, the nightmares return. Kyle is back at home, reaching for Gray, but an iron gate slams down between them. He wakes up screaming, and 451 pins him down, not to hurt him, but to teach him a lesson in silence. The world is loud enough, 451 says. He has cultivated his own peace in the quiet. At the next meal, Kyle, Malachi, and Billy sit together. They tell the kid to keep his head down and survive his short sentence. Malachi survives by brokering contraband. Andre approaches, spitting into Kyle's meal. Billy, reaching his breaking point, lunges at the gangster. The guards swarm, and Andre promises to pay them a visit that night. After sundown, Kyle offers Tolek money for a cell transfer, but the bribe isn't enough. Outside, the guards organize a spectacle. Men forced to dress as women to dance before a jeering mob, building up to the main event, the fights. Andre enters the ring, pulverizing his opponent even after the man is down. A brawl breaks out between the gangs, requiring the guards to intervene. Kyle asks Malachi if 451 ever fights. Malachi explains that the big man quit public bouts years ago, yet the administration keeps him in that cell as a pawn whenever someone pays for a transfer. They shuffle them into 451's room to terrorize them, pocketing the cash. That evening, the guards drag Billy to Andre's cell block. Billy tries to fashion a weapon from a toothbrush, but Andre effortlessly disarms him, stabbing the boy in the side. Tolek, sensing a chance to squeeze more money from the Americans, has Billy sent to the infirmary. The next day, working on the railroad, Kyle is blindsided by a Russian gang member who accuses him of disrespect. When a guard investigates, he naturally takes the gangster's side. 3 guards descend on Kyle, beating him into the dirt and warning him that he isn't in the States anymore. Kyle is dragged back to solitary. He resumes his routine, greeting his neighbor through the wall. The man is still moaning, a constant, tortured soundtrack. The days drift by in a haze. The moth returns, and Kyle talks to it, clinging to his sanity. During a torrential downpour, water cascades through the hole in the ceiling. He hears the guards hauling his neighbor out for a fight, a man of immense proportions, over 2 meters tall and weighing 130 kilos. Finally, after growing a full, ragged beard, Kyle is released. He notices a mountain of food being delivered to the neighbor's cell. The giant is still wailing. Back in the yard, Andre threatens Kyle again. Elsewhere, a gang feud boils over with a public execution, just another Tuesday in Krvavi. That evening, alone, Kyle picks up 451's diary. His cellmate has written that hope was the first thing to die, and hatred is the only fuel left. 451 appears in the doorway. They lock eyes, a moment of profound recognition, but no contact is made. In the cafeteria, Andre pushes too far, hinting at his plans for Kyle. Kyle snaps, walking over and leveling the gangster with a single punch. The rest of the Russian crew descends, but Kyle is relentless, focused entirely on Andre. Tolek breaks it up, throwing Kyle back into solitary. 451 watches, understanding that desperation is the catalyst for transformation. In solitary, Kyle begins to train. He is building something stronger than muscle. Meanwhile, on the railroad, workers strike a discarded landmine. A guard vehicle rolls over it, exploding in a fireball. Amidst the chaos, Billy sees an opening and bolts for the fields. The guards open fire, dropping Billy's companion instantly. The kid runs, pushing through swamp and field until a helicopter descends, forcing him back. Tolek beats the boy, lamenting the money he cost them, but they don't lock him in solitary. He's more valuable as Andre's plaything. Kyle's physical training intensifies. When he returns to the cell, 451 sees the shift. The American is no longer the man who arrived. He is a weapon being forged. But his cellmate knows the cost. Kyle will lose his soul to become part of the machine. The administration notices Kyle's conditioning and sets up a fight with Andre. The elites arrive, champagne in hand, betting on the Russian. The fight commences. Kyle takes heavy punishment but refuses to stay down. He lacks the finesse, but he lands a heavy hook that rocks Andre. Billy cheers from the sidelines. Andre, enraged, floors Kyle, beating him into the dirt while taunting him. But in a final frantic move, Kyle drags Andre down and clamps his teeth into the gangster's neck. Khrushchev screams for a halt, but it's too late. Andre dies in the dirt. Kyle lets out a feral, guttural victory cry. Back in the cell, 451 remains unmoved. He warns Kyle that the adrenaline of the kill will dissipate, but the path he's chosen leads only to an abyss. The American becomes the new prize attraction, forced into bout after bout. Wardens from other facilities bring in their best fighters to test him. Violence becomes his vernacular. The inmates fear him, cheering his victories with a mix of awe and terror. Malachi and Billy watch their friend, terrified by the monster he's becoming. 451 asks if Kyle even recognizes his own reflection. Kyle has no answer. Sometime later, Gray's brother returns, pleading with Kyle to let him fight for his transfer. Kyle, hardened and cynical, tells him to abandon all hope and erase his existence. During a concert celebrating Russian independence, Billy attempts another escape. Kyle warns him of the futility, but the boy is desperate. Malachi facilitates the plan. Meanwhile, a new fighter named Volya arrives, seeking retribution for Andre, but Bolt restrains him. As Khrushchev delivers a pompous speech, Billy slips away. He is spotted and dragged before Tolek, who brutalizes him. telling him he is a perpetual revenue stream he will never leave. Malachi has sold Billy out for medicine. 451 observes the betrayal. Billy is turned over to Volya. The kid fights to his last breath, spitting in the giant's face, but is beaten through the night. By morning, he is dead. Kyle arrives to find the boy lifeless. With his final ounce of energy, Billy whispers a warning. Don't let them change you. The body is tossed in an unmarked grave. The suffering is over. The words haunt Kyle. The next fight is scheduled. Kyle against Volya. This time, Kyle refuses to play. He sits in the center of the ring, silent. Volya pummels him, but the American's resolve is absolute.
I won't play your game anymore.
Tolek drags Kyle out, promising agony. He is handcuffed outside in the elements, the freezing cold, the searing heat, the starvation. The only exit is to fight. Meanwhile, 451 acquires kerosene from Malachi. He douses the man and strikes a match. Malachi screams that he needed the medicine, but it's too late. The fire consumes him. Watching the inferno, 451 recalls his youth bullied for a speech impediment, abused by the teacher he trusted. He burned that teacher just as he has burned Malachi. That is how he ended up here. The guards toss him into solitary. In the yard, the inmates are changed by Kyle's stubbornness. They stop fighting. They unite. Tolek demands Bolt send Volya, but the answer is no. They can't break everyone at once. The moth returns to Kyle, and he sees Gray's spirit, not a ghost, but a reflection of his restored humanity. He has found his way back. Khrushchev and Tolek are frantic. The money has stopped flowing. Killing Kyle would only make him a martyr, so they plot to neutralize him. They move him to the infirmary, where he sees Gray one last time. She is proud that her husband has returned. As long as he remembers her, she exists. If he won, when he recovers, they move him to solitary, then drag him to the main corridor. Khrushchev announces that the rebellion is over. The American will fight one more time. They unleash Mylok, the massive, masked giant. The beast charges, grabbing Kyle, throwing him like a doll. Mylok attempts to choke him, but Kyle bangs on the wall of a nearby cell. The giant freezes. He recognizes the knock, the sound of his only friend, the voice through the wall. Mylok releases him. He cannot speak, but he pats Kyle's head, a silent apology. Tolek draws his weapon, ordering the fight to continue. Kyle says he is ready to die, but he will not comply. Mylok turns, charging the guards. He is riddled with bullets. Kyle joins the fray. The prison erupts. Doors are ripped from hinges, and a massive riot consumes the facility. Kyle holds Mylok as he expires, covering him with a jacket in a final act of dignity. The prisoners surge toward the exit, met by automatic gunfire. Kyle and 451 find refuge. Kyle speaks of Gray, her murder, his loss of self, and his vow to never surrender his humanity again. 451 reveals his secret. He has records of every crime, every death, every corruption committed in Krovavi for 2 decades. The plan is set. Kyle will fight one last time to draw them out. After 2 weeks of lockdown following the riot, Khrushchev authorizes the final fight, Kyle versus Volya. The Russian hits like a train, but Kyle is ready. He locks Volya into a hold, snapping his arm. Volya draws a hidden knife, but Kyle counters, driving the blade into his stomach. As the gangster bleeds out, Kyle slams him into the wall. This is for Billy. He knocks him out. The guards drag Kyle away. While the attention is on the ring, 451 infiltrates the garage. They ambush the guards. Kyle holds Tolek at gunpoint, forcing him to unlock his handcuffs and return the wedding ring. He drops a car on the lieutenant, ending him. 451 steers Kyle to the warden's vehicle, handing him a guard's uniform. Kyle implores him to come, but 451 declines. He hands Kyle the documents, the proof. Kyle drives away. 451 marches to the warden's office, pliers in hand. Khrushchev dies at the hands of the man who witnessed every one of his sins. 451 offers no resistance when the guards arrive.